The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi everyone, thank you for joining in today. My name is Paresh. I'm going to be your moderator for the webinar. Uh, Today's webinar is about lead management, presented by John Warner. I'm going to quickly introduce Otto, and then I'm going to pass it over to him to kickstart the webinar. So Otto has been in the digital marketing space since 2006. He has been delivering digital experiences since then via email marketing, website design, development. Uh, he has also expertise in implementing marketing automation platforms. He has owned and ran his own web development agency and built consulting practices both in Oracle and Adobe Marketing Clouds. He is specialized in B2B marketing scenarios, CRM integrations with marketing automation systems. So with that, Otto, over to you.
All right, thank you very much, and welcome everybody. Thank you for attending today. What I'm going to go through today is building lead management processes and really trying to simplify it down to one that you could build today, or at least get the process put in place and do it manually. Well, I'll have an example of how you might do that out of a marketing automation platform that's integrated with the CRM as well. But I'm sure that everyone's seen a whole bunch of practices, guides and slides and visuals on what lead management is and what that process should look like. A lot of them get very complicated. So I really want to boil that down to things you can execute in the short term to get the process in place and get started with it, even though you might not be at the full maturity level of integrated end-to-end lead management funnel stage process. So we'll go through that. And we'll, again, try and show you a little example of what that's going to look like in a marketing automation platform as well, just using some of the basic out-of-the-box features of that platform. So I'm just going to go ahead and kick it off and continue on. So just a little bit about edynamic. We're a global digital marketing and technology agency. We really focus on customer experience, and in such, we have really developed a culture of integration between all of the different technologies and platforms that you generally see throughout an entire marketing process. And that's really starting from the top of the funnel, if you will, and everyone uses the funnel, so we do as well. The top of the funnel where you're doing your inbound marketing and demand generation all the way through to lead nurturing and management and into opportunity and deal management in your CRM. So we handle all of that. We started out as a Sitecore partner, really managing web development within Sitecore. And from there, we branched out into integrating Sitecore with in the diagram on the right. So from there, we started to become partners with other platforms that were focused on the marketing automation side, Salesforce Marketing Cloud, Oracle Marketing Cloud, Marketo, Sitecore as its own marketing automation now as well. So we continue to use that, but we have experience in quite a few different platforms. And what I really want you to get out of all of that is not necessarily just an ad for edynamic. The point is you can get this done regardless of what platform you're using. All of these software platforms generally have similar features, at least in terms of the higher level process of putting something like lead management or lead nurturing in place. So it doesn't really matter what you're using today. Chances are there's a way to get it done in that platform, and it's probably using some of the basic features at least to get started. We go ahead and deliver everything at edynamic, from the actual marketing strategy, the UX experience, and then building it all out in the technology. So not only do we bring that strategic guidance and we know what you need to be looking at to get things built out, but we know how to build it out, and we know which platforms are going to do things in different ways as well. So if anyone has any questions about maybe which platform they should be using, or hey, I'm using this platform, will it do this or will it do that, feel free to ask. I may or may not know the question or the answer to the question. I have been in quite a few of these different platforms throughout the years, so chances are I've at least am aware of what something may or may not have, even though I might not have used it directly myself personally. So let's get right into what lead management is before we get any further down. Obviously, a lot of definitions out there. For us, it's a process, and generally it's the process of, first of all, capturing leads, again, from that top of your funnel, nurturing them through the actual buyer journey and qualifying and scoring them. And then, of course, deciding when is appropriate to pass them on to the sales team and which information is relevant to inform the sales process. So we do look at it end to end. And again, this ubiquitous funnel that we have that everyone seems to use, and it's a very good analogy. So again, we use it as well. Top of the funnel, your advertising content, your anonymous website traffic, you're starting out, you're trying to track and profile people, you've got inbound personalization happening, and you're deriving that based off of what people are doing on the web, but you don't really know who anyone is yet. So you're really trying to get lead capture to happen, and that's where the lead management process starts. So a lot of the top of the funnel activities that you're handling on your website, doing banner advertising and SEO and all that sort of stuff, it's really these steps before we're actually getting to that lead capture point where we can actually start lead management. But it is important that we have events. Usually that's form submit, obviously the easiest, most straightforward one. And once that happens, we now have a known contact that we can start performing outreach to from an outbound perspective. And this is where we can start managing things like lead stages and lead score, lead nurturing, and all these other sorts of middle of the funnel activities where most of lead management ends up occurring. The goal there is to get to a marketing qualified lead, as I'm sure many of you have heard the MQL term. We want to make sure that we're giving not just any old lead over to the sales team, but actual quality leads that they have a chance of closing. So we have to then look for a qualified response, which is a piece of the MQL threshold. Sometimes scoring is a part of that as well. You may or may not even be doing scoring. But in any case, we're looking for that qualified response, which is going to tell us that this person is ready to talk to our sales department and is probably going to end up becoming an SQL, or a sales qualified lead. So when we push this qualified response over to sales, it does get a lead assignment. That's when I skipped. And then the sales team following it from sales. Is there an identified opportunity that we can now go about trying to close? There is. Then we start opportunity stage messaging out of the marketing department, anything that we need to do to help support the conversation that sales is having. Also, however, any sales unqualified lead, so when we get to this SQL stage, if it actually turns out that that lead is not sales qualified, or if we have an opportunity that we recycle those back into the middle of the funnel and we start nurturing again. So those aren't drops, and that's an important part of lead management that I often see missed. It seems so obvious, but believe it or not, I see that missed quite a bit where, a sale doesn't happen or something doesn't get qualified and it doesn't go back for re-nurturing. It just kind of gets dropped and nothing happens with that lead once it's been, disqualified. So that's a very important step that you definitely do not want to miss. We want to go into what a simple lead management process looks like. Just gave you the kind of overview version, 10,000-foot view of the truth. I want to start drilling down into what it looks like when we want to actually put this in place and we want to do it, maybe this month. How do we actually get that done? So starting with the simple lead management process, or any lead management process, always starts with planning. We do have to understand what our lead management stages are. This is the best practices, fully mature version. If you want to go end to end, this is what you're going to have to get to, or at least some version of this. This is not simple though, and there's a lot of different pieces within each one of these stages that need to have their own specific items aligned to it, like campaigns. So if you have a lead funnel that's that built out to start with, you're also going to have to align campaigns and messaging that goes out at each one of those stages. So now you've got all these campaigns that you got to build out and deal with a lot of content. It's not to say that you might want all this stuff out at the get-go, but in terms of getting from start to your first launch where you're actually starting to use a lead management process, this is a lot to bite off and chew doing all of this at once. It's probably going to take like 6 months. There's integrations not just between sales and marketing systems, but you probably got website systems and advertising systems that need to come into the mix as well. So looking at all of it in one is pretty difficult in terms of, well, okay, but what do I need to actually execute, and what do I need to get built out in my platforms today so I can just connect things and run some tests and see how things work, and then I can apply it to the nth degree like you see here. So what we really want to do is actually boil this down to a funnel that looks a little bit more like this. We've got prospects, as you saw on that top funnel, but these are not yet leads. So again, when we're talking about lead management, everything that's happening on your website with inbound marketing, yes, it's very important. It's certainly a big piece of your overall marketing strategy. And obviously it does generate those leads. So there wouldn't be any leads to manage if you didn't have that top of the funnel, the very top of the funnel inbound marketing happen to the anonymous users that you don't yet know. As I mentioned before, though, we have to have an identifying event that ends up capturing that lead and really truly putting it into the lead funnel. So now that we can truly call this person a lead, now we can start thinking about lead management. So let's separate. Hopefully, a lot of you guys have website teams that handle all the UX and banner advertising and social network advertising and SEO. And a lot of you on the phone either have that part figured out or have somebody else doing it, so you can focus in on the lead management, which starts after that lead capture happens. So now we get into the actual funnel, and we really only need 4 stages here. So rather than that giant, funnel with all sorts of different stages, which you might get to if you've got, incredibly mature marketing and you've got, a lot of different teams that are involved. But again, trying to get this done, within the next month. Let's start here and let's start simple. Let's just call these guys a new lead. That's been a lead that's captured. We're going to acknowledge and welcome them. Once they've engaged with us a little bit on that next message, we've got an engaged lead or a warm lead, as it's typically called. And if they're interested at this point, we're going to nurture and educate them to try and get them ready for sales. Once they are ready for sales, now we're going to call them an MQL. We're already at that marketing qualified lead stage. We're at stage number 3. So again, we're really simplifying this down. And if you have something with just these 3 stages from a marketing perspective, you're now at the point where you're delivering much higher quality leads to the sales team than if you didn't have this in place. So you don't have to go from 0 to 10 stages all at once in order to deliver those truly qualified leads. It doesn't really take too many stages to actually up the quality of leads you're giving to sales by quite a bit. And also really give them more information about where that lead is within the buying process and within their decision-making process. So right now, you could even stop right here and say, let's just get some campaigns that are going to get this done, and for what really truly is an MQL, and just push that over to sales. So of course, when we push it to sales, it goes to the CRM, and it ends up becoming an SQL once sales goes through their process of evaluating, usually BAM criteria, but different sales teams do different things, and becoming an SQL. We saw before that we will recycle back into earlier stages if they don't end up being a qualified lead. But for now, we don't really have to worry about that right this second. If we get this done right here from a marketing perspective, especially if you don't have any of this right now, and we're really just doing batch and blast and shooting over every single person who we've got on our list who has a pulse over to our sales team, we're going to be actually upping our game quite a bit, setting the bar for what's going over to sales. So the other thing here is we want to start with just one campaign to get the process in place. Once we have that foundation, we can always build upon it. We can always add additional stages if we feel like we need to do that. But let's just get a campaign built that uses this principle and start testing it. And maybe all we have to do then is replicate that campaign and change the messaging, change the target audience. And we've got the same exact process for nurturing and managing leads all the way through to sales. So this is really, again, a simplified version of the truth here. And I do want to make sure that I'm not missing any questions. So I just want to see if there's any questions in here. Sound is bad. Is it still bad? Are we still having issues hearing? If everyone could just type in the comments, we'll make sure that I'll get my mouth closer to the microphone and hopefully everyone is hearing. I apologize for that. If there are no other questions on what the lead stages that you really need to get started with are, we'll move on to the next slide, which is how do we actually set up our structure. So once we've used this very simplified 3 to 4 lead stages and no more version of lead management, what do we have to do to actually get it rolling? That's the next question. I just want to make sure I'm not getting it better now. Okay, great. Thank you. And again, apologies for that. I'll keep my mouth as close as I can to this microphone. All right, so how do we end up starting out setting up our infrastructure for actually getting this done? There's a thing to have in place. We've got to have a nurture campaign usually it's a marketing automation platform. You might be doing that manually right now if you don't have a marketing automation platform, but certainly you'll be able to get away from a lot of these manual tasks once you have that in place. And obviously because we only need one campaign, it's going to probably be a drip nurture campaign with multiple touches. If we're only got one email, we're still doing batch and blast, and that kind of defeats the purpose. So content is always a bottleneck from the perspective of planning and getting things. And so emails, landing pages, forms, do we need them? Usually the answer is yes there. We want to gather all that content and just make sure we've got what we need from a content perspective. From a planning perspective, though, we really want to understand, well, what is the qualified response that we're looking for from this campaign that is going to tell us that this is now an MQL, or at least to tell us that someone is warmer than a new lead. So is that a click? Is that a click on a specific link to, say, a download? Is it a contact us form? It could be any of these things, but these are the decisions you're going to have to make. And there might be multiple ones. There might be denote an MQL as opposed to a warm lead. So we just have to keep that in mind. And if we do have a different lead stage, so for instance, if we do have someone who comes in and they engage a little bit, but not so much that tells us they're an MQL, well, okay, they're a warm lead. Well, what did we do with them that's different than we would if they are at the MQL stage, or if they show us no engagement and they're still just considered a new lead? So the qualified response, that event just needs to be worked out. Keep it simple, though. As is the theme for this webinar, keep it simple, make it a form submit, make it a link click, make it something that's very easy for the user to do. If it's something that has to be a derivation of a whole bunch of different behaviors, for instance, well, they downloaded an article and they then submitted our contact form, and we're not going to actually consider that a qualified lead until they do all of those things. That is a consideration as well. So make sure that whatever that qualified lead behavior is, or if it does have multiple behaviors that you're looking for, you're again going to have the proper content that backs up people being able to take those actions. So keeping it simple it really means any behavior that you want someone to perform does usually require content. So if you're trying to keep your content production needs to a minimum, you would want to minimize what those behaviors are that actually show you this is an MQL. So this should be impactful. I touched on the path for warm leads. So again, if somebody doesn't make it, all the way to this MQL space like we want them to, and we're again also going to have some content for those situations as well. So your nurture campaign, just gather the elements, make sure you've got them ready to go. When we're talking about campaigning, obviously the messaging is what we're most succinctly looking at. So that's generally where you start your planning from a campaigning perspective. Once you have that, though, we need some lead management elements, as I call them. We need some things that we have to get into either our forms, our contact database, and CRM. Usually that would be in both places. Or if we're still doing things like, collecting form data into well, we at least need to make sure we've got the field for these particular items in that report so that we can send it off to the next step and have the next person, send out the next email based on that information. So it's important to understand where in the process you're going to change your lead stages, and you're going to have things like the lead stage pick lists, the lead assignment rules, and CRM integration calls. Again, if you are integrating from an email system or a marketing automation platform into a CRM, those are all going to have to be set up. I'm not really going to get into the technical ways of setting those up or the other considerations that you might have for that type of integration. But it doesn't have to be complicated either. When you're talking about CRM integration in particular, a lot of it has to do with field mappings, and you get into these conversations about, well, I want every single field that's ever existed in CRM, and we're going to need to transfer all this data over, or things aren't going to work. That's not actually the case. You really only need a couple of data points going over in order to get these things done. And you really see just about all of them here. The lead stage pick list, Again, we've just got 4 values: new lead that comes in from capture, warm lead after they've engaged, MQL, and we'll have an SQL phase. If we get, some data back from the sales team that says, yes, this is an SQL, we might have to send out some different messaging to support that sales process from there. So we only need 4 values. It's 1 field. The lead assignment rules, maybe we need a field for that if it's regional, or if we want to use some sort of random ID to create a round robin. But again, we probably only need 1 field for that, and we might do the entire process just out of CRM, so we might not even need to consider that in your email system or your marketing automation platform. But it is something that you do need to take into account, because if we're going to send these MQLs, after that we understand how the lead assignment works within your organization, so that we can give the proper data to the sales team to perform that. Especially if it's regional, or if it's based on brand or product interest or something like that. That's data that we then have to make sure we collect throughout that nurturing process, so we can send it over and kick off that assignment process. So a couple of administrative things that we do have to keep in mind. And the last one we see here is the non-SQL and or closed lost reason pick list. So again, this is usually something that sits in CRM, but we do need to have a field for it in our marketing and automation platform, so we can trigger the next action based off of this reason coming in. A lot of CRMs are starting to put this sort of stuff in by default, but you might need to change the value so you have your own custom reasons. And I've just got some examples of values here, like no budget, wrong product, wrong time, not the right person at the account, just any sort of common reasons why a MQL would not become an SQL. We want to know that so we can recycle them back into the proper nurture campaigns. We can pivot our messaging, especially if it's the wrong product. Perhaps the salesperson mentioned what the right product is. Maybe we want to put a selection in for, product of interest that they can change, so we can, again, reinform the marketing automation. We need to re-nurture that contact. But that's about it. That's really, truly about it. So again, you see a lot of very complicated integration and lead management processes out there. It doesn't have to be so complicated, and that's really, again, what I'm here to tell you and what I hope you get out of this. So a few elements, some creative assets, a campaign, and obviously we're going to have some triggering that we have to set up, which I'll go through in a moment. But so those are about all the elements that you really need to get lead management happening right now today. So I want to just pause for a second. We'll go into a quick example that I'll show you. It happens to be in Eloqua, this example, but as I mentioned before, you can use just about any platform. We've done this for our clients in Eloqua, in Pardot, in ExactTarget, using Salesforce CRM, using Microsoft Dynamics CRM, using various CMS platforms. So we've done this with a number of platforms. And again, you can probably do it with the platforms you have available to you right now. So the other consideration, oh, wow, I'm going to have to buy like 3-4 platforms for this. Not necessarily. And in the absence of automated platforms, you can do a lot of this manually. I know that's painful. We don't want to do it manually, especially not in the long term. But to get it started, we might have to do some, or hopefully not all, but some pieces manually to start out. So I hope I've rambled on long enough there to give everyone a chance to type out some questions if they have any. And if not, I don't think I see any coming in. So in that case, we will end the show. And I want to get into an instance of Eloqua where I've got some things set up to show you. So just give me a moment to log in, and we'll get started there. So I think as I'm logging in, one of the things to keep in mind here is that most of what you're about to see, actually truly all of what you're about to see, is out-of-box functionality within the Eloqua system. So this isn't something where you need, crazy customizations in your platforms or, very complicated integrations put in place. Again, most of the marketing automation platforms out there have very similar functionality. If you drill way down into the details, you'll start to see differences in, more advanced functionality. But the basics that I'm about to show you, again, you can do in most platforms. So you should not be scared away just because, I might be in Eloqua and I know, Eloqua's Oracle now. They have a reputation for maybe being a little bit expensive and being a little bit more than you might need, but lots and lots and lots of platforms do this. So you shouldn't worry there. Excuse the lag here. It always seems to take a second longer when I am running a webinar on top of it. It will come up though. Okay, so we have the Eloqua platform set up here, and as an example, we use Eloqua internally as well. This happens to be our sandbox where we do a lot of testing out of it. So even if you do have a marketing automation platform in-house today, and there might be a whole bunch of other things going on in it, you can again use very, very simple, basic features of it in order to get some very good and very quick lead management and lead nurture. What I've done here in Eloqua is I've started this lead management webinar campaign, which is quite simple, and we'll show you how you can use a platform like this to just track all of your lead stages quite quickly, and also get some messaging out quite quickly. That's going to be pretty impactful for nurturing, especially those leads that might come into your website and you think they might not be that interested. But once they start submitting forms and things, as you get some messaging out to them, you'll see that you can actually get quite a few MQLs back over to sales by just continuing to nurture and continuing to have another touch ready based on what their previous behavior was. So what we have in this campaign, and this is just Eloqua's interface, it's drag and drop. A lot of interfaces, again, will look similar. They'll have different icons, but it's usually a workflow. It's got items flowing into each other, decision rules with a yes/no path. What do we do if someone has clicked an email? What do we do if they haven't? So all we have here is a form, and I'll show you the form. We'll actually submit it. That person's going to come in and get a thank you ebook offer. So the form is the actual lead capture, as we were talking about before. We had an unknown person on the website. We had the website team at the prospecting phase with all sorts of great things on the website to drive them to a lead capture point. Capture points here in the form, it comes in, and we send them an email immediately. Now, this can be done in just about any marketing automation or CRM platform. The platform that you're using does not have some sort of form integration tool. Your web developers can probably get it done, but I would be very surprised if that's the case. So we do need that trigger point between the lead capture and kicking off the next step, which is, of course, the lead nurturing process. We can also use that lead form to update things like lead stage or to send things to a CRM system. So form submits are important not just to identify people, but they actually give you the ability to kick off a lot of different processing. And again, that's ubiquitous across most marketing automation platforms. Once they get this first email, which has an ebook thank you offer in it, we're going to check and see click on that email, and there's a link in that email that goes directly to that ebook. So it's not just any old link click, it's a click to our goal, to our qualified response at this stage, which is clicking to get to the ebook download page. We're actually going to update their lead stage from new, so they're a new lead when they come in from a form capture. They click on the link, they've engaged, now they're a warm lead, and because they're a warm lead, we're going to go on to the next stage. So when they see another form, if they submit that form, we now have an MQL, and we're going to send that MQL into CRM. So our instance of Eloqua is integrated with our Salesforce platform. It happens to be Salesforce. And Eloqua, as does Marketo, as does Sitecore, in fact, as does obviously Pardot and ExactTarget, which are now Salesforce Marketing Cloud. And in fact, a number of other platforms that might be lesser known. Basically, all of them have some sort of connector where you can send a new lead into a CRM platform. So this is not just Eloqua functionality. This is how it looks in Eloqua, but you're going to be able to have this ability in most platforms. And again, if you're doing this manually, it's a matter of getting things into Excel and uploading them. Or if you don't even have a CRM, well, you are going to have to do some manual stuff in Excel, but you would simply just capture this and you'd be sending your next email or next touch manually. I hope you don't have to do that for too long, but you can certainly still get this done in a manual way using something like a constant contact or your own email service. So let's look at what a couple of these things look like, just so we can do some test submissions of this form so you can see what it looks like to kick this process off. So I'm just going to get into this page that got created. And again, this is just all, I hope this is not an internet connection error. Apologies here, everyone. And I do get slowed down in terms of internet connection when I'm recording a webinar and doing a demo, so my apologies. Should be getting back in here. This is my very crude design work here, just to get a quick landing page so we can show this example up. And again, it's still loading a little bit here, but the important part is that I get to submit the form. So here we go. Now it's up. I'll just do a quick submit. All right. So that's successfully submitted. What happens is there's a form submit, and again, you have very similar functionality in most platforms here. So that is the sign-up form that we ended up submitting on that landing page. What happens in Eloqua, and again, most other form tools, is that we have processing steps that are going to update our contact record in the system. We're going to add them to that campaign we were just looking at. We're going to add them to what's known as Program Builder. This is so we can send them through to the CRM platform and create a lead. So the program where we've got here is create lead, and it's going to be a new lead. So the status in Salesforce is going to be new. Usually that means that the assignment rules to assign that lead out in the CRM platform are not going to kick off because it's not at MQL status. So even if CRM wants the data, and a lot of CRM admins out there will insist on having all data in their system. I've run into that quite a lot, but that's fine. We'll send it over. We definitely want to create leads. We don't want to hold anything back, but we're going to, of course, give that lead stage, or sometimes it's called lead status. But we're going to update that field, and we're going to make sure that the sales team knows, yeah, we've generated a lead here, but it's not ready. It's not at a qualified status. If you gave them a call, they would probably be upset because they're not ready to purchase right now, and they need further nurturing. So make sure, again, that we have that lead stage or lead status field, and we do have the appropriate values. That's going to have an impact on the sales team. If they start getting assigned leads that are new and they're calling people up who are very unready to buy and end up just getting upset, not only is the sales team going to be upset because they wasted time, but that lead's going to reactivate. We're not ready to talk to sales, and sales is trying to reach out to them. We actually see more drop off when that happens, and it takes longer to reactivate a lead, if we can even reactivate it, if sales gets involved prematurely. So that's a very important step, and we want to make sure that we do send the lead over in the right way. And then normally we have a redirect web page, but because I've submitted that form, if I go back into my campaign here, I should be in this campaign now. And so we can see this little 1 And that should be me. I can double click in here and I'll go ahead and take a look at who that is. Yep, and that's me. So now I'm in this campaign, and very soon I should get this email in my inbox. So let's see if it's there yet. But it will come in very soon, I believe. And here it is. So here's the first offer that we have. And if I click on this, I will actually be verified down the yes path for email. So I'll go ahead and click on it, and we'll see what happens. So I could submit this form, which would make me an MQL. But in Eloqua, I should at the very least, and I think Eloqua's closed down on me. Here it is. In Eloqua, at the very least, I should, when I refresh this, will go down into the next path. And then I will get the subsequent email and the subsequent status updates to my lead stage. And that will all end up syncing over to CRM, especially once I become an MQL. So that's the basic pathway we have for getting a very simple lead management process in place using one campaign. I can replicate this campaign, save as template would replicate it for me in Eloqua, put in different content, link it up with a different form. And now I've got another lead management campaign ready to go, hooked into that same exact process. So again, this doesn't take a whole lot of time to get set up. Even the forms you saw, there's not a whole lot of fields in there that we need to at least get things started. And subsequent steps within this campaign, you can start collecting even more data to send over to the sales team to give them even more qualified information that they can use to help close the sale. But that is about it for our presentation. I do want to open it up to questions at this time. And I hope everyone's gotten a lot out of this. I at least really hope that people have started to realize that lead management doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be a long, drawn-out process. You can get things done very quickly. You can start off very simple, and starting off simple will still have quite a big impact on not just your MQL delivery to sales, but your ROI attribution at the end of the day. Because if you're delivering higher quality sales, higher quality leads, you're certainly going to close more sales than if you're just sending over every single lead that happens to, touch your brand in any way. Any questions out there? I don't see anything quite yet in the chat. Let's take a look. Doesn't look like it. We'll give everyone a few minutes for questions, and I'll if it comes up. Again, thank you for attending today.